Okay, colleagues, we all set? Nice to see Chambers with some friends here for this special meeting on this cold evening here in December. So I'm going to call this Kalamazoo City Commission Committee of the Whole meeting to order for Monday, December 8th, 2025. First order of business, roll call. Clerk Borling.
Commissioner Hess.
Present.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Present.
Commissioner Pradel.
Present.
Commissioner Slaby.
Present.
Commissioner Wilson.
Present.
Vice Mayor Duncan.
Here.
Mayor Anderson.
Here. Thank you, Clerk Borling. Next, Communications Manager Moore.
None, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Well, this is a Committee of the Whole meeting, and the focus of this meeting is to have a public rollout of our City of Kalamazoo budget for 2026. It has been available on the website since at least the 1st of December, but this is our opportunity for all of us just to look at it together here and ask some questions. We're not taking any action on this. This is really an informational and input session. First order of business is public comments. Is there anyone who would like to make a comment? Committee of the Whole comments are limited to 2 minutes. Please come forward, state your name, and whether you live in the city.
My name's Edward Nickerson. I live in the city of Kalamazoo. For about a week or two after they had the incident down at the Kalamazoo Valley Museum, a lot of people were telling me that they had a water line break. And I told all of them people, I was standing in front of the doors with a kid, and I don't know if it was the fire marshal or somebody else came out and told me that they had a fire there. Maybe you could check to see what really happened. It seems like to me that resources from the city are spent on it. That's about all I have to say.
Thank you. Yes, next, please.
Hello, I'm Kay. Thank you for hosting this meeting. I was going through the budget. I didn't see the amount for the shelter program, which was concerning, because that's one of the major reasons why I was here. I don't know, is that on there now? I didn't check before I came if the number was on there, but it should have been on there. I think it's one of the biggest things that we need to be investing in our city. I think that we should find the funds within the budget, especially the police budget, which is like 45%, and a lot of overtime and a lot of just kind of like community things community like investment that with police, like policing things that I'm just like, do we really need to be doing those things? I mean, based on the OIR report, we need to be doing more like meaningful community engagement than just like wasting money on like superficial cop things. Other than that, like I commend some of these programs. The home share program, I'm glad that's coming up. I know it's been in the works for like 2 years now almost. But, you know, for what we're living in right now in the country and the housing crisis and everything, it doesn't really overhaul any of the real systemic issues. And at the same time, I don't feel like there's a metric. Like, is there a metric to measure, like, how, like, the funding is, like, bridging gaps? Is there some kind of, I don't know, the shared prosperity, it does talk about, like, equity, all this stuff, but I don't feel like there's really something in the budget that really lets us know, hey, this is how we're overhauling and bridging this gap this year, right? Because I feel like we need to start making strides. We need to start being intentional about that. We have systemic issues in this city, right? It's not only like, oh yeah, we need to fix housing. Housing has been bad for over 30 years. We're talking about big gaps, and the budget's just not intentional enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the chambers who'd like to take advantage of public comment?
Hi, I am Albert. I live in Kalamazoo. And regarding the budget, I am concerned that every time I walk around the city or drive around, I see unhoused people out in the streets, even during the night, during the winter right now, which is kind of worrying. And I think like a big chunk of the budget should go to fix that very obvious problem that it's very visible and does affect a lot of people. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to take advantage of this public comment period? Seeing no one, thanks to those of you who did come and make an effort to provide us with a comment. And now we are heading towards our work session here. Manager Moore.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Commissioners. It is, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Commissioners. It is our pleasure to present the FY 2026 budget for your consideration. Having not been a part of the extensive work that went into assembling this proposal, I want to say how impressed I am. This budget reflects a thoughtful, responsive, creative, and fiscally sound approach to implementing your vision and meeting the needs of our community. I want to express appreciation to the 55th City Commission for its vision, leadership, guidance, and direction, and continued support throughout the process, throughout the development of the budget. And also thank you, the 56th City Commission, for your careful and deliberate review of this proposal. I would also like to acknowledge the many individuals whose efforts shaped this document. First, I would like to recognize former City Manager Ritzma for his leadership in this work. Members of the core budget team, Laura Lamb, Rebecca Kick, David Marquardt, Steve Vicenzi, Melissa Fuller, Stephanie Radat, and Colin Halsberger. Our peer review members, Carolyn Williams, Tanya Hewitt-Smith, Danielle Bockham, and Chelsea Downsworth-Hubbard. I extend additional thanks to the entire cabinet and key budget personnel across the city, without whose effort and dedication this product would not be possible. So this afternoon, you will hear from a few members of the core budget team. Department directors are also here to answer questions should you have them. If you have additional questions after tonight, we ask that you would reach out to us in the city manager's office, and we'll make sure we get you the information that you're looking for and share it with the entire city commission. So tonight begins the opportunity for public input, but this is not the last opportunity. Again, we will have the public hearing on the 15th and for your final consideration on January 5th. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to staff so that we can begin our conversation. COO Lamb.
Welcome, COO Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. It's great to be here tonight. So as City Manager Moore mentioned, we've got multiple opportunities for engagement with regard to the budget. You can see where the budget proposal can be accessed, also where there are additional opportunities for comments to be made throughout this process before the January 5th meeting, in which we hope we'll be able to get a budget approved. There's a delay, we'll see. It was working, Scott. I know you checked it. It's probably easier. All right, okay, let's try this again. So to start off, we want to do a look back, and this really gives us a sense of understanding, how did the 2026 budget get developed? This timeline shows that we always start with Imagine Kalamazoo 2025, our current vision. You can see at the beginning what inputs inform this budget. You've got Imagine Kalamazoo, you've got the National Community Survey, you have the retreat that we held with the previous City Commission. These inputs then help inform departments' proposed budgets and their special requests. And as a part of that evaluation process, the special budget team looks at alignment with Imagine Kalamazoo and alignment with the commission priorities as a part of that process. So a little bit of background on the National Community Survey, or the NCS. So the city conducts a community survey every 2 years. The most recent one was conducted earlier this year in January. This was the 7th time that we did the National Community Survey, and we do this to gauge resident perceptions on their life in Kalamazoo, government services, policies, programs, et cetera. NCS uses a scientific survey that allows us to take a representative sample of Kalamazoo. The survey used a probability sample of 2,800 households. It yielded a 10% response rate, which was about 281 responses. Now, the key to this is that those results are then statistically significantly weighted against our profile based on Census and American Community Survey. That allows us to understand, with about a 95% confidence rate and a 6% margin of error, what we think the general population thinks about our services, about our programs. In total, over 600 communities use NCS. This allows us to not only benchmark against ourselves year over year, but also against these communities to understand where we might fall in the rankings. So this table here, it shows basically the residents' perception in terms of quality of services and in terms of importance. So you can see in terms of quality, education, arts and culture, health and wellness rising to the top. In terms of importance, you can see safety, economy, and utilities as some of the most important things that our residents feel, or that our residents rank. Now this one here actually lets us look at how quality of services may not correlate with the importance that residents place. So you look at the gap between quality and importance. And what we can see here is safety, economy, and utilities are the top 3 where people feel that these are very, very important programs or projects, initiatives, but they feel the quality is lacking. And we see mobility kind of coming up as the 4th. Whenever we go through the National Community Survey, they really try to have us focus on these elements, where there's a gap between resident perception of what's most important and their perception of the quality of the services we're delivering. These community survey results were shared in depth with the Commission at the retreat in an effort to have community survey voice inform the prioritization. Just as a side note about the community survey, results themselves are being incorporated into Imagine Kalamazoo 2035. We also had departments really try to dig into the results, to be curious about where there might be a disconnect or a difference between resident perception and maybe staff's perception of our work. In some cases, we've had departments identify where they're going to target communications when there's a feeling like we really are doing a lot in this area. How might we communicate that better? How might we be more targeted about those improvements and future plans to improve? We're also working on a data visualization project so that we're able to take perception of residents, which is reality, but also provide some context of data, whether it's investments, total dollars, or as an example, where we understand that our community is still looking for greater perception of safety. We also have some really good data coming out of public safety that suggests there are some great trends in our crime data. We're not trying to negate community perception at all, but we're trying to provide some context. So we'll have some time to talk about that at a later date. So in terms of the Commission retreat that was held in March, there's some prep work that many of you are familiar with. For the past 3 years, we've used a GOSM model: goals, outcomes, strategies, and measures. Leading up to the retreat, we communicate with all the commissioners, and we ask them to prioritize the top 5 outcomes that they'd like to see us use in developing the 2026 budget. You can see the results of that prioritization here with affordable housing, community prosperity, decreasing violent crimes, especially among youth, economic development, and then support for the unhoused. So at the retreat itself, we have staff come forward with both existing strategies and potential strategies that they feel could help us achieve the outcomes prioritized by Commission. In the retreat itself, we have staff and Commission going through a pretty challenging exercise to evaluate those strategies based on impact and difficulty. At the retreat, the Commission identified these 7 strategies you see at the bottom of the slide for us to be able to consider in the 2026 budget and beyond. So in these slides, you're going to see the Imagine Kalamazoo goal, you're going to see the prioritized outcome, and then you're going to see the strategies and measures that came out of the retreat. For this first slide, Safe Community, we have mentoring, interventions, mediations, and city programs for at-risk youth and their families. And this really speaks to an ongoing work, the collaboration between public safety, Kalamazoo Public Schools, police athletic leagues, and community partners to really go out and make sure that our youth know how many incredible programs exist in this community to support them. We also, under Safe Community, had installing the overt pole-mounted cameras in the downtown and the North Side Cultural Business District. This work was actually completed in 2025, and staff is going to be seeking additional funds in 26 to look if they can expand that program. In terms of shared prosperity, I talked about home share, heard a comment earlier. This is a model where you've got one or two more unrelated people living together. This can generate income for a homeowner, it can promote companionship, and it really can create expanded opportunities for housing. Now, staff are currently working with a home share feasibility study, and there are funds within the Housing Development Fund designated for a launch if that feasibility study proves to be favorable. You'll also see here is the unhoused support. And so this 2026 budget proposes to continue $500,000 for unhoused support for emergency shelter during extreme weather. Now, the budget document can be very difficult to navigate. This is being recommended out of Foundation for Excellence funding, and that can't be viewed on the Special Revenue Fund page. Continuing on with shared prosperity, we have critical code repair. This is partnering with Community Homeworks to assist low-income households in preserving their homes and making very critical repairs. There's $135,000 included in the proposed budget for that. We also see Bridges to Career Opportunity. This is a partnership with the Northside Association for Community Development to amplify their existing programming, particularly around workforce development and financial coaching. So this works with their existing programs, but is looking to provide additional support to be able to magnify the impact. Lastly, in economic vitality, we've got Invest in Kalamazoo Entrepreneur Networks, or KZEN, in the Capital Consortium. This work is really trying to help entrepreneurs who face barriers to traditional banking access the capital that they need, launch, grow, or to acquire their businesses. Thanks to our Shared Prosperity Coordinator, Kevin Ford, work has already started this year on the Capital Consortium program. Mr. Ford was able to secure a grant through the International City Managers Association for us to join their economic mobility cohort. This is a national cohort which Kalamazoo has the opportunity to participate. In addition to the grant covering our involvement in the cohort, it also provided funds to support KZEN to start the work of relaunching the Capital Consortium. This means work's already started. So far, a dozen banks, credit unions, community development, financial institutions have been engaged. Financial reps have been invited to committees. There's been presentations made to the Community Reinvestment Act to try to get their support and really try to make connections to local banks. The ecosystem, the entrepreneur support organizations have been engaged to strengthen the launch, and there's also been a landing page established with the two committees, Access to Capital and Education, with history and information for interested parties. Now I'd like to introduce Deputy City Manager Rebecca Kick and David Marquardt, and they're going to dive into some of the key aspects of the 2026 budget.
Thank you, COO Lamb, and welcome Rebecca and David.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Good evening. So during the Commission budget session, of course, we discussed Imagine Kalamazoo 2025, and we discussed it for probably the last time. We're now on our pathway to Imagine Kalamazoo 2035 for the next budget session. So as we wrap that up, we're really proud of the work that we've been able to accomplish through Imagine Kalamazoo 2025 and the priorities that the Commission is funding in 2026. So these priorities cross-cut many of the 10 strategic goals that are in Imagine Kalamazoo 2025, and DCM Marquardt and myself will be highlighting those proposal strategies. You did hear from some of them from COO Lamb as well. But just to highlight the Housing Development Fund, which we fondly call the HDF, that fund supports affordable housing opportunities through 3 different strategies. So the full amount will cover mixed income, multi-family gap financing, as well as housing rehabilitation and appraisal gap and rental subsidies for infill housing. Additionally, the home share program funding is also included in that HDF line item. That's why you don't see it in a separate line item on the sheet that you have. So I just wanted to call that out, that it's in that HDF line item. Again, COO Lamb talked about our commitment to keeping people in their homes funded through critical code repairs. We know that those code repairs can allow people to stay in their homes longer, and that's why it's so important that we continue to fund those continuously. The Bridges to Career Opportunities is a model developed by the Local Initiative Support Corporation in partnership with the Northside Association for Community Development. This funding will establish the Bridges to Career Opportunities Center. BCO is a nationally recognized framework that integrates foundational education with workforce training and bundled services to help adults with low incomes achieve financial stability and career advancement. These services include context-based, adult-based basic education, occupational training, career coaching, financial counseling, and access to income supports, which we know are all very critical to raising the wages of people that are in our community as well. Another program that we have supported for several years is foreclosure prevention. Between 30 and 80 tax foreclosures occur each year in the city of Kalamazoo, especially in our core neighborhoods that surround our downtown due to financial emergencies brought on by medical bills, spousal deaths, or other emergencies that can cause loss or reduction of income. The goal is to reduce or eliminate these causes of annual tax foreclosures. And the program allows the county treasurer to assist owners experiencing a one-time qualifying event with financial assistance to avoid the foreclosure and retain their homes. Over the past 5 years, the economic development team has also partnered with the United Way of South Central Michigan to administer the Kalamazoo Micro Enterprise, or the KMEG, funding grants. This program was created to provide grant relief to small businesses and entrepreneurs in the city of Kalamazoo during COVID, and we've continued this program. This next iteration of the program, while we plan to continue offering the $5,000 amount of grants that we have been doing in the past, we're also going to increase those to $10,000 to be able to support the next level of entrepreneur growth. So seeing and learning from the past KMEG programs and really expanding on that and understanding that sometimes 5,000 is not quite enough. We need to boost that. So we're hoping that we will fund 20 or more establishments with those funds this time. We have neighborhood and planning grants as well. The amount for planning, this request is to support the neighborhood planning effort that will follow the approval of the Imagine Kalamazoo 2035 master plan. And so this will help 3 neighborhoods do planning and outreach activities and include outreach items to be able to kick off those plans. The capacity building request is for a small amount of funds to support neighborhoods that are not within the core neighborhoods and do not receive general funding from the city, but this will give them some starting dollars for us to be able to engage and help those neighborhoods that are a little bit more fledgling. Demolition funding is also something that we have done on a continual basis because many of the homes that experience fire, blight in particular, cannot be, we can't use CDBG funding when it's an ineligible option, but yet those buildings still, we need to be very responsive in cleaning those up. So we've requested the additional assistance from you in order to help either demolish 3 to 4 buildings, about $15,000 or so per demo. Otherwise, the fire blighted buildings tend to remain there for much longer than they should. So that funding has been really wonderful to have as a gap funding. And then there are improvements in Millen Park and Spring Valley Park of over $500,000 that would be invested. And you're going to hear a lot more about the significant street improvement budget increase. Obviously, this really goes back to that NCS, National Community Survey information that COO Lamb was talking about. Again, the perception of our roads not being to the quality that they need to be, yet the importance for us to fix those roads is very high. And so showing that we can initiate more funding towards that, and obviously this is with a lot of significant state help, that we can start to turn the tide on that. And I'll leave it to you, David.
Thank you, DCM Kick. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. It's a privilege to be here with you this evening. Another way in which we are finding success within Kalamazoo is ensuring that our young people have good access to opportunities to thrive within our community. And a number of things that you'll see within our proposed 2026 budget include things like our Super Rec program and All Things Possible. In our Super Rec program, we've got 9 weeks of free summer camp programming, of course, that we offer Kalamazoo youth, and that is offered at 5 sites across the city of Kalamazoo. This is really remarkable for a city of this size, and I know draws in hundreds of young people every season. The All Things Possible program also is a really nice way in which to prohibit the summer slide, if you will. Ensuring that there's a good transition from middle school to high school opportunities through that programming. Of course, the partnership with My City, KRISA, is another really important opportunity to employ young people ages 14 to 21, and we'll continue to support that effort through the FY26 budget. In our Youth Action Council and Counselor and Training programs, we attract roughly 30 youth leaders, providing them opportunities to grow and learn and lead within the organization. Specifically within the Parks and Recreation Department, in addition to a youth advisory board and providing them opportunities to lead in really unique ways and in really important ways that will help establish their strength moving forward here in Kalamazoo. And then the Police Academy League also, we've got a really great mentorship and relationship building program that attracts close to 2,000 individuals on an annual basis, so we're really pleased to be offering that up in our 26 budget as well. And we are also focused on ensuring safety and well-being, and specifically that has some things to do with our infrastructure. You heard a little bit about this through Director Baker and his presentation on our water rates last week, but we will be investing $38 million in federal funds into the Arcadia Creek through the PROTECT grant. This is a really important stormwater infrastructure improvement that will pull 60 acres of land out of the floodplain, in addition to 70 homes and buildings that will be removed as well. You heard a little bit about our progress on the lead service lines as well from Director Baker. We will be investing $6 million through the FY26 budget. And again, that will help us significantly make progress on lead service line replacement to the tune of about 1,200 service lines in the FY26 budget season. We'll be making improvements, of course, through capital improvement plans for KDPS facilities and equipment upgrades. And then, of course, as you heard from Director Baker, investing in our water and wastewater improvements as well. And then finally, we look to create a stronger city organization. We recognize that our strength is in our diversity, and so we will be building some new DEI conference and training opportunities with the County of Kalamazoo starting in the fall of 2026. We will be embarking on some really important and much needed improvements to City Hall. We are under contract right now with architectural engineering firm to begin those studies so that we can create better accessibility into and throughout City Hall, while also accommodating our workforce in a healthier way. This commission and the previous commission has also adopted a number of budget requests for us to make improvements to our crosstown facility. This will continue to accommodate public safety teams, but also accommodate community planning and development, our communications team, and internal service departments as well. And then in FY26, we will be embarking on a compensation study for the NBU staff class. This will help us ensure that we are being competitive and remaining a strong force within the region and across the country as well. So at this point in time, I will turn it over to our esteemed CFO, Steve Asenzi.
Thank you, David, and welcome, Steve.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. I'm going to take you through some of the numbers behind a lot of the projects and different things that you just heard about what we're doing with this budget. So for starters, this budget is a decrease of 11.4% from last year. Majority of that coming in our capital plan. So roughly it's $54 million decrease year over year. If you remember last year, we had a significant project with our drinking water state revolving fund of $110 million. Obviously, that's a one-time type of item. However, we still have a robust capital plan being put in front of you that keeps funding at a very high level for it. And then just kind of going through some of the highlights here. The budget maintains a millage of 12 mills for city operations. This is decreased from the 19 mills that the city is able to levy, and thanks to the FFE's continued funding for that. It also budgets 1.8 mills for solid waste, includes 711 full-time positions and 6 part-time positions. And then here we have the different buckets from the FFE. 16.6 million going toward tax reduction, 5.1 million towards budget stabilization, and another $5 million in aspirational projects. This year, we're happy to report that we're expecting increased funding to our local and major streets programs. The state, with their budget, reworked some of how the gas tax works for road funding. We're expecting a roughly a 33% increase to those funding levels, which will help support the increased capital plan and operations going forward. We're also creating a new building inspection fund to carry out state building code inspections. That work had previously been reported in our general fund. We're now transitioning out to a special revenue fund where it will be self-sustaining, and it will have a fund balance that will allow it to be flexible and more reactive to changes as permits, if we have large building projects like we do right now, we're able to kind of increase funding as we go because it's got its own funding versus competing against all the other general fund projects. And this budget also maintains a balanced general fund over the 5 years. And as I kind of mentioned that, the 2026 budget does have a deficit of $1 million. That has been part of our 5-year plan for a number of years. Roughly $750,000 of that has been planned for years. $250,000 of that is that transfer for that building inspection fund I just mentioned. But then as you see here, over the 5 years, we plan to have revenues catch up to expenditures. And then along with this, we maintain our compliance with our internal fund balance policy of 15% of operating revenues in our fund balance. So you can see here where we have a slight surplus at the moment compared to that policy. We're still under the 20%. Anytime we go above 20%, we allocate that toward one-time costs. Otherwise, we maintain a little bit of a buffer there to allow for these years like 2026 where we have to have a little bit of a deficit without having to cut services. Our general fund revenue is expected to increase 1.2% to $86 million. As you look there, you see the breakdown. Largest share of our budget comes from our property taxes, with the next largest portion coming from the FFE and other revenue. And then also, followed up with state grants and revenue sharing, and then other charges for services. As I mentioned, property taxes being the largest part, we're quite aware that there has been a lot of discussion, publicly, nationwide, statewide about, the amount of property taxes that are out there. As you look at a typical city of Kalamazoo resident, roughly 47% of their tax bill goes towards education between the state education fund, K-recess, school debt funding, other millages there. So if you look at your tax bill, you can see all those millages. And I just wanted to bring up for, just public knowledge that roughly 41% of our millages are extra voted. That means that at one point in time, they will come up for renewal, and it will be up to the voters to renew those millages. And those millages are specific towards providing specific services in the area. So just a little bit of education as we look at our property tax bills every year. And then we're looking at our general fund expenditures increasing 2.35% to 87 million. Majority of our general fund goes towards personnel as we're providing services to our community. Then we have other services and charges, which comes from software, outside contractual, utilities, and other professional services that the city needs to in order to run to supplement the services we can provide internally ourselves. And then just kind of looking here at our general fund by department, public safety is our largest portion of our general fund at 47%. Historically, as we've looked at other communities, it's not always the easiest comparison, but when you add up, police, fire, EMS services in other communities, it typically adds up to around 55 to 60%. So we do recognize a general cost savings by having public safety all in one. And then I would also like to just kind of mention here, budgets for these different departments can fluctuate from year to year. It had been reported that the parks budget decreased $20,000 this year. That decrease was made up of a few things. We had some one-time projects in our 2025 budget that did not carry forward to 2026. We also had some programming for a holiday parade and other holiday services that it just depends on the time of year of when we recognize that. As we secure that funding is when we recognize it, so it was in our 2025 budget due to timing. We did not have that funding secured as of yet, but when that funding becomes secured through a grant or other donation, we will recognize that as that comes in as well. And then just kind of getting into a few of our budget challenges. This year, the state of Michigan did not approve their budget until October 7th, and that's at the time where we're trying to pull all of this together and create our budget book and get everything done. And the state budget has a significant impact on what we can do through the various revenues that we count on through the state. A couple of the changes that happened this year is the state changed how they account for gasoline taxes. They're increasing the standard gas tax. However, to offset that, they removed the sales tax on gas. The sales tax used to have a revenue sharing component that would come to our general fund. So through that change, the general fund saw a decrease of about $350,000. And then another change that the state made as well was in the 2025 budget, there was a public safety trust fund created by the state. They removed that in the 26 budget, and they replaced it with a public safety revenue sharing component. That revenue sharing component came in roughly $700,000 to $800,000 less than what we were anticipating based on the trust fund. So these were all things that we had to adjust to kind of at the 11th hour for preparing our budget. And then as we see here, our operating revenues increased 2%, which sounds okay. However, it's falling behind general cost increases where the CPI is expected to be around 2.8% for the year. So all those challenges kind of build up and we have to find solutions. We had, every department provided some cuts to their future plans as we prepared the general fund budget. And then, the biggest place where we took this from was looking at where else we have excess funding potentially. The city has historically contributed $3.5 million with its partners. The city has a shared retiree health care plan with CCTA. Between the city, the water, wastewater funds, and CCTA, we contribute $3.5 million to that fund every year. That fund has now been over 100% funded for the last 2 years. So it's a place where we look at going from an area of scarcity, because just 4 or 5 years ago it was at 40% funded, to a place of excess. And also our retiree healthcare plan is a closed plan, so we're kind of moving into a new phase of how do we manage this plan. On the chart up above, the blue line represents, if we were to maintain the $3.5 million funding, the blue line represents what would happen in that trust fund over the next 20 years, and that's per our actuarial report. The orange line is where we would anticipate to be as we reduce this contribution from $3.5 million down to $1 million. It still maintains a strong fund balance in our OPEB trust fund and ensures that we can still continue to offer those benefits and maintain the benefits that we've promised to our city retirees. So this is one of those areas where we can move from scarcity to surplus and then also ensure that we're utilizing as much funding today as we can for our community that's here today. I mentioned the number of positions in the budget before. We are requesting 14 new positions that will add to core services for the city. Of those 14, only 2 are funded by the general fund, and that's our labor relations specialist and FOIA administrative assistant. We've seen a significant uptick in the need for both of those positions, particularly in our FOIA, as we've seen the FOIA cases more than double in the last few years. Continuing on, we have some positions for our local and major streets. Those are largely made possible due to that increased funding I mentioned from the state earlier, so they can continue to carry out the increased capital plans and day-to-day work of our streets. We're also adding 2 positions in our solid waste fund that will help clear litter, trash, and debris throughout the city's right-of-ways. And then we have positions in our water and wastewater funds. These positions are funded through the water wastewater rates, which Director Baker presented to you last week. These will continue to help support the ongoing services in those funds. And then through our Downtown Economic Growth Authority, that's one of the component units of the city. We work contractually with them to provide staffing. They've requested additional staffing as they start to see their revenue increase. And so this position then would be worked through an agreement with the Downtown Economic Growth Authority for the city to provide additional staffing to them, and they would pay for that. Stepping into our special revenue funds, historically we've shown you totals of our special revenue funds. This year we're bringing in just the operating amounts in our special revenue fund. I have a number of slides later where we'll go through all of our capital plans, but we felt that this would be a little more impactful to show just the operation portion. So we see here a number of the different special revenue funds that we have presented, largest being Major Streets, Foundation for Excellence with the aspirational funding, other special revenue funds, which include, our Kalamazoo Municipal Golf Association, Cemetery Fund, the Building Department Fund for inspections I mentioned again earlier, Drug Enforcement, Historical Commission, and Blight Abatement. So those funds all add up to total about $5.7 million. And then we have our Solid Waste Fund, which is funded through our millage of $4.7 million, local streets at $4.3, and then additional community development at $0.2 million. And then stepping into our enterprise funds, we have our water, wastewater, and parking funds. These are funds that rely upon the charges for services that they can derive through their operations. There's no general fund component to any of these funds. They are purely rate-based, they're purely rate-based for all 3 of them. Looking at our wastewater, roughly 49% of that $50 million is related to treatment and other related activities to treatment for our wastewater. The water system is split between a few different areas, most notably water supply and treatment, and also water distribution. So that's how the water gets from one place to another and gets to your house eventually. And then stepping into our capital plans, I mentioned we see a significant decrease compared to last year. However, looking at our overall trend, we're still providing a very robust capital plan that is still near all-time highs for spending, which it's to maintain city operations, maintain city infrastructure. And then I just want to note here that these capital plans can also be found either in the budget book, or we have them separate if you go to the kalamazooCity.org/budget. We're continuing to invest nearly $43 million into our water system, continuing with PFAS compliance, system reliability improvement, lead service line replacements, and treatment station improvements as well. The wastewater treatment system also includes $26.2 million in funding. That is a significant decrease compared to historical amount of projects in that fund. Director Baker has some presentations coming up. We are kickstarting a project related to solids handling and that process. That program that project will, in the long term, improve our environmental responsibility and also reduce ongoing operating costs by pre-treating some of the waste before it goes out to a landfill. And then here's where we have a large increase in our planning. We have $56.3 million invested into our local and major streets. Of that total, 46 million is coming through outside sources, largely through state and federal grants. So again, taking advantage of those partners that we can and improving our system as much as we possibly can with the dollars that we have on hand. The goal of this is to maintain and improve our PASER ratings. And so that's the pavement surface evaluation rating. It's a visual inspection done of the roads. MDOT has, carried this out for a number of years. And so working towards improving that entire street conditions. And then we're looking at increase or continued investment into $2.8 million into our general and parking CIP. Mostly, we've talked about a number of these programs already tonight. The mill and park improvements, safety improvements over at Homer Circuit Field, KDPS building maintenance equipment and software, and record software for them as well, as that becomes a more and more important part of our day-to-day lives, and also fleet heavy equipment. And then just kind of a summary of where all the funding comes from. Roughly 57% will be from bonds and reserves that we have on hand. $5 million from a drinking water state revolving fund bond, which has favorable interest rates and often principal forgiveness as well. 2.2 million from jurisdictional transfer, which were funds that we agreed to with the state, I want to say 7, 8 years ago, where we took over some of our downtown streets network so we can program it as we see best fit. And then they provide us funding to help to ensure that that was maintained for the first decade. And then intergovernmental, which, as I mentioned, that is your state and federal grants that we're bringing in as well. And so at this point, I will turn it back over to you, Mayor, for discussion and questions.
Thank you so much, CFO Vicenci. I appreciate that. So, Commissioners, this is obviously just an overview, and we've had the budget book in our possession for a while, so this is a good time for us to go through things that we may have found not clear in the budget book, or questions that we have, specific questions for anyone who's here. But I do, first of all, just want to say thank you once again to everyone on the city team who's worked to put this together. You can basically take an hour or two and summarize this, but this is the result of hundreds of hours of work, collecting input, working through department by department, and giving us what is required, which is a balanced budget here in the state of Michigan. Questions, Commissioners? Commissioner Slaby.
Yes, thank you, staff. So upon reviewing the proposed budget as is laid out on the website, when you look at the other funds, so for example, insurance fund, DAGA, Brownfield, NCBDA, and even the special revenue funds in the first section, those pages are blank. Could you share more about why those are blank, why we don't have any numbers there, just so that the public can understand if that is incomplete, if there's still pending data, or that it was intentionally left that way?
We're going to have to look into that. I don't believe they're blank, or they're not intended to be. Last time I reviewed them, they were not blank, so we'll have to take a look at that and get back to you on that.
Thank you, Steve. Other questions, Commissioner Slaby?
Yes. So I was curious with the GOSM model, why we didn't consistently apply that across all goals. So it looks like we pretty much have very specific measurable targets for each of these goals. One could argue the launch of the home share model is a specific one. We either do it or not as a pilot program. But on our last goal with economic vitality, it's very vague. Increased funding and programming development aimed at filling gaps in existing network, increased number of businesses supported. It doesn't say number of businesses or a percentage increase. So why is that the case for that one compared to all the other ones where we have very specific measurable targets?
Certainly. So I think certainly with the GOSM, I would say the measures can often be the hardest part for us. In the case of that one, you have the goal of helping entrepreneurs that have had access to capital, but because you're talking about a relaunch, there was not an ability to really drill down to the details. So I certainly can acknowledge in many ways the area where greater metrics, more specific metrics were needed, but the way that it was phrased is that we want to be able to launch the capital consortium, the thought being that as part of the launch and the engagement, you would then be able to develop and track more detailed metrics.
So we're simply saying that for the economic vitality, which has been decided a priority for this community, that we are only going to say that we've been successful by simply putting in place this network versus having specific measurable targets to understand if we are indeed filling these gaps for entrepreneurs.
I now understand your question better. So as part of the retreat, that economic vitality was the outcome, and then we went through and prioritized strategies. That particular strategy was the one that was prioritized. That's not to say that therefore that is the one and only strategy related to economic vitality that's going to be implemented in 2026. But we had probably 25 or 30 strategies that were put up relative to the outcomes that were prioritized. So there were other economic development strategies there, they just didn't get prioritization. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess it just still seems inconsistent. I mean, even just before that, under shared prosperity with the Bridges to Career Opportunities initiative, you know, we have it very clearly stated that we aim to have 50 residents receiving bundled services. So I guess, you know, I don't see why we couldn't have something under here that's very specific and measurable by saying, you know, we are going to contact 50 businesses, 100 businesses, just based on staff capacity and what we've been doing over the last 5 years. And I think I would love to see something like that, so that when we say we are successful in these goals, that we can actually speak to those measurable targets like we're doing across the other goals that have been set as priorities by the commission.
Point well taken. I think step one is launch the capital consortium. We hope to be able to check that box. What I definitely hear from you is, in doing so, we want to have more specific measurables, such as number of businesses engaged or entrepreneurs engaged, or ideally we're able to report out how much capital has actually been obtained through the consortium. So we'll make a note of that. Thank you.
I'll let everyone else have a turn.
Okay, Commissioner Slavy. Vice Mayor Duncan, did you have a question?
Yeah, if I may.
Oh, I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to respond to Commissioner Slaby's earlier comment. So we did just pull up those websites. Sometimes you just have to give them an extra minute to load or just reload them. I know I pulled one up, it looked blank, I reloaded it, it came right up. So those are active.
Okay, I will say, I did pull it up when you said that it was there. I was able to pull it up on my desktop, but I still can't pull it up on either of my mobile devices. So I'm just, you know, if there was a message on there in the text saying, you know, please wait, that there may be, you know, a delay in the data downloading, because again, I've tried this several times on mobile devices and I haven't seen it, so I'm thinking about our residents, and if they, you know, if they go on there and they don't see that there's at least a note saying that there may be a delay in the data downloading, that they may be frustrated and not understand why it looks incomplete.
Understandable, totally agree.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Mostly questions about public safety. So do we have somebody that can speak to that here?
Yes.
Okay, so I see public safety taking up almost, you know, half of the budget. Would you be able to speak to response times, outcomes, et cetera, so that the public knows what we're getting for our dollars?
Sure, thank you, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Yeah, I'd be happy to answer those questions because it is a significant investment and we recognize that. And as you saw from the surveys, it's also a very important need for the community, to have a safe community. And I will tell you that we are a very busy department for that investment. Year to date, we have responded to 128,057 calls for service. Again, it's 128,057 calls for service year to date. We have responded to a little over 340 fire calls and around 8,520 medical calls. So very busy department, and the thing I'm very encouraged about is our crime stats are really trending in a great direction, and CO Lamb kind of alluded to that, and I have some great numbers to share that I'm going to be sharing publicly here soon, year-to-date numbers, but we are down 16% from last year in Part 1 violent crimes, but we're also down 15% in violent crimes from 2 years ago. We're down 29% in violent crime from 5 years ago, and we're even down 10% in violent crime from where we were 10 years ago, which I think is a very significant trend. Same with property crimes. We're down 12% for the year, down 26% from 2 years ago. We're down 38% from 5 years ago, and we're even down 16% from 10 years ago in property crime. So those are all very encouraging. The other thing that's been a city commission priority, and we appreciate the support of the commission to invest in public safety personnel and technology to make us more effective, but gun violence has been a #1 concern in our community, and we are down this year 23% in assaults with firearms from where we were last year, but we are down 36% from 2 years ago, and we are down 49% from where we were 5 years ago. So it's very encouraging to see that the strategies and the investment is paying off. Homicides are down significantly from all-time highs that we had in 2023. We're down 30% from last year in homicides, 67% from 2 years ago, and we're down 50% in homicides from where we were 5 years ago. And this year we've had 7 homicides, and the detectives have worked hard with our community. We've solved 5 of those 7, and the other 2 are currently under investigation. But you also asked about response times. Our response times are, for a shots fired call or in progress call, is about 203 seconds, which is 3.4 minutes on average, and it's a little over 7 minutes for all calls for service. So we try to be very responsive and quick, and we respond to, if you call, we respond. And so, again, we are working hard, and I'm very encouraged with our community partnerships and strategies that the data is showing that we're trending in the right direction.
So that I'm clear, if I heard you correctly, gunshots in Kalamazoo, our response time is less than 4 minutes.
Yes, it's just a little over 3 minutes for shots fired calls. That's on average, so many times we're there quicker, but on average it works out to 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
This one isn't about public safety. Thank you so much, Chief. So there was mention of a summer program earlier.
Yes.
And I just took notes. What are the age? What's the ages for that summer camp?
The summer camp or the outreach program? Because we got a lot of them with PAL and with our outreach.
Multiple programs.
Yeah, multiple programs. So
specifically the free summer camp, sorry.
Yep, so one of the things that was a city commission priority was to reduce calls for service and reduce youth Part 1 crimes. And so one of the things that we do is a door-to-door with our pastors on patrol and our community policing officers and our street outreach team to contact youth that we identify are most at risk. And so this past year in 2025, we made contact at 58 separate residents of youth who are at risk to try to get them engaged in programming, some of these youth camps that you're talking about. And so I don't have the numbers of PAL participation off the top of my head, but I can get you those because we've had significant numbers enrolled in the PAL programs. But I can tell you what we track is not necessarily how many kids enter these programs, it's are we reducing juvenile involved crime? You know, and so I can tell you we're down 23% in Part 1 juvenile crimes from where we were last year. So those directed contacts and face-to-face in people's homes and getting them engaged in programming is working.
I'm sorry, just a follow-up to that.
Yeah.
I'm asking, what's the youngest that we take into those programs and what's the oldest?
It depends on what programs you're talking about. So Parks and Rec have a wide range of programs for younger kids. A lot of our PAL activities are really from all age kids. We have from T-ball all the way up to baseball. We have flag football all the way up to rocket football. So it's really a wide range of kids.
Some of those programs obviously are not public safety programs, so Patrick Rivera is here also. I don't know if you want to respond to that.
He's ready to go. Because I don't know the exact ages, but I'm sure Patrick does.
Welcome,
Chief, I
sir.
appreciate you.
Vice Mayor, for the Super Rec program I think that you're speaking of, the ages range from 6 to 12 years old, and that's for the free campsites throughout the city. And then same for the summer campsites as well, the paid sites that we have.
Thank you, that's all.
Thank you. Other questions, commissioners? We'll give everybody a first chance here just in case. Anyone else who has questions right now? Yes, Commissioner Hess.
Sure. So one of the things that we have is this, from the safety, go ahead and stay here, Chief. We have this perception of a safety gap. And we're hearing good things from you. I know that we have our public information officer, Zach Hamilton, putting out all kinds of great information. Maybe you can share what kind of things that he does and the new, like the video series that are coming out and things that are coming out so that people can understand how hard you're working, what our officers, our sworn officers and our detectives and our civilians are actually doing on behalf of all the people of Kalamazoo to keep them safe. So it sounds to me like, and from looking at the data, thank you. We've been working really hard, and you've heard us in the last few commissions here about our priorities. And there is a perception of a lack of safety in Kalamazoo, and how are we going to turn that around?
Yeah, we fully recognize that perception usually lags a little bit behind reality, right? Because we know we had some really challenging years as a community. We had a couple of years, especially right after the pandemic, where violent crime spiked. And it wasn't just Kalamazoo, it was really a nationwide thing. We were just confident that we had strategies in place that would get that back under control. Now, admittedly, it has taken a little longer than what I had hoped. I thought we'd recover pre-2020 numbers a little quicker than we have, but we are obviously trending in the right direction. The one thing, we're very transparent, so if we have an issue, we report it. We have a public information officer that gets that out, and I think that's good and bad because people think, well, there's a lot of crime. Well, maybe they're just more aware of it now because of how quick social media is, how we get that information out, because we do want to let the public know what's happening, areas to avoid and all that. But the crime, you hear a lot of chiefs saying, well, crime is way down from 2023. Well, yes, because 2023 was record highs throughout the country, but we can say that we're down from 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and even 10 years ago. So we are trending in the right direction, and we are trying to get that word out that, you know, we have great partnerships in our community. Public safety is working hard. The numbers are showing, and the other thing that we're working is to try to change that perception. One of the things we recognize is we want people to feel safe coming to our neighborhoods and our downtowns, and the violent crime shows that it's a very rare thing, and especially in our business district in downtown. How can we help change that perception? One of the things that the commission approved was those, CEO Lamb talked about those overt cameras. So you see throughout our North Side Cultural Business District in downtown, we have these white boxes with our shield on it and blue light with cameras. So people know this area is being monitored, and it helps us prevent crimes and hopefully solve crimes if they occur. And so that's something that other communities are doing, so we're modeling that to try to help improve that safety. We're also really focusing on officer presence. We want people when they're downtown and in our neighborhoods, they want to see officer presence. We do community surveys, and that's something that always comes up is more officer presence. So we're encouraging officers to get out on foot, do foot patrols, bike patrols, be in the neighborhood, be visible to try to help that perception. Because I can say all day long that, hey, our crime numbers are trending in the right direction, but if people don't feel safe, that's a problem. We're trying to address that as well.
Thank you so much. Let's see. So I think that was all that I needed from you at this point, but there, in terms of perception of safety, and maybe you could speak to this before anyone else might like to come and join in the party. There's a perception that the city isn't doing anything for the unhoused, and because it's very visible, we see this. Is that part, and maybe CEO Lamb can share too, is the visibility of the unhoused helping to create that perception of safety? And are they really a threat? And I know that we have a community service team that maybe you could speak to that, but then moving into where we are in the areas of our budget, where we are investing money into housing, into affordable housing, into emergency housing. I'd like us to speak more to that, and then the perception of that, and really the city's responsibility of where we spend our taxpayer money, but if you could talk about the homeless, that'd be great.
Yes, thanks, Commissioner. Yeah, I do believe that when people come downtown and there's a homeless population, that does create a perception that it might not be safe, even though statistically, we don't have violent crimes committed very often by unhoused or any more so than any other member of the community, but I think it's that perception. So one of the things that we address, especially putting resources into our community service team, which is our houseless outreach team, and we have a really good staff, and we had a sergeant and officer, and we increased that, so we have 3 officers and a sergeant and a lieutenant that oversees it now, so we put a lot more resources into it, because the big thing is we know a lot of those folks that you see downtown, you can't lump homelessness into, when you talk about unhoused downtown, maybe in particular, you can't paint everyone with the same brush. Everyone has different needs, and one of the things that we had to do is identify who these people are, build relationships with them, find out what they need, and our community service team has been able to do that because it's cold out now, and we're making sure that there's folks that aren't out here freezing to death on our streets, and we're making sure that people are getting into the emergency shelters that we have, that the city's invested in. And so, again, it's been zero, and you haven't heard of, people, I don't want to curse or jinx us here, but you haven't heard of people freezing to death in our community because we're out there intentionally engaging with these folks to get them into services, and that's part of why we're out there. It's not just about it's not necessarily enforcement, although that can be a piece of it, because we also have to make sure that people follow our laws and ordinances, but we're also, the main focus is try to get them help and services if needed, and to try to get them in shelters. It's too cold. No one should be living out on the street right now. It's too cold for that, and we're trying to get them, but many times they're able to do that because of the relationships they have with our community service team, and they're willing to get help that they normally wouldn't be willing to get. And I think we've seen a lot of success with that. We've had some really good success with our Finding a Way Home program. I think we've served so far over 70 individuals this year to help them connect with resources, because a lot of people they have no ties to Kalamazoo, they just end up here. What can we do to get them back to their support system? So all that is done through our community service team, and they do a phenomenal job, and they have responded to and helped a lot of folks out there.
I really want to give gratitude to your community service team, and especially Sergeant Alwan, who was the original person that inspired this team. And when we say public safety, it's not just all the people, it's everybody, not everybody that's housed, but it's everyone that's unhoused. We are keeping the unhoused as safe as possible with this team.
Yes, because oftentimes they're the victims of crime too, right? So it's certainly a part of it. And then thanks for mentioning that, because Sergeant Alwan is retiring, and tomorrow is his last day. So it's kind of sad for us, but I'm happy for Sergeant Alwan. But we have a great replacement. Sergeant Fidel Morales is going to be taking over in his role, and I know he'll do a great job also.
Congratulations, Sergeant Alwan. So I don't know if anybody else can speak to the unhoused. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Commissioner Hess. Certainly, we've also been working through the notion that there are a number of efforts underway to address housing across the continuum, but how do we get our arms around it? Deputy City Manager David Marquardt and our communications team and CPED are actually putting together a housing webpage that is attempting to try to capture everything that we do, from payment in lieu of taxes that you approve, from our housing development fund, from our tax credit housing, from so on and so on, including our unhoused supports, how to put it in one place so that, one, we can use it to keep track. We can look to see where we need to do more, but also often as you all are preparing talking points, I know that you're having to spend time on your own trying to pull these details together. So I would say we're probably about 75% done from being able to kind of share proof of concept. We'd like to put a little bit more details in there. We can highlight what's being proposed in the 26 budget or what might be approved depending on when we launch it. But that will be an effort to try to more definitively demonstrate all of the ways in which the City of Kalamazoo is supporting across the housing continuum. With regard to the 26 budget, quick math, about $2.5 million of the $5 million of FFE being requested is going towards housing-related activities. Between the Housing Development Fund, between the emergency shelter, foreclosure prevention, critical code repair, you'll see that more just under 50% of what's being requested at FFE is to support housing activities. There's no question there's always a need for more, but I get very encouraged by the support and the collaboration with other partners in the community and the way people are coming together, that I think the work that the city will do will be amplified through the collaboration with our partners.
Thank you for that. You're talking about our collaboration with the county, which actually has a housing millage, and the community, the continuum of care, and all the other nonprofits that are in the community that we work with. So thank you for that. You might be able to answer this, COO Lamb. My last question currently is, we did take some money from the OPEB fund, the retirement fund. What has the communication with the retirees been like? Do they know? Have they been made aware?
I'm actually going to have CFO Vicenzi come up because he's done some good outreach on that. So 1 second, please.
Yeah, so related to the change in our funding for the OPEB, I met individually with the president and vice president of our retiree group called URGE. I also did a group meeting last Thursday. I went and attended that meeting, presented to them, answered questions. The biggest thing I want to reiterate with that is, we're moving into more of a maintenance phase with that retiree health care plan. We're not changing any of the benefits. We're still maintaining all those promises that we've made. We've just moved into a place where overfunding it would limit our ability to use those dollars in the future. So we want to properly fund it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that the retirees are comfortable with the changes that have been made into this fund.
Yes, the ones I spoke to, and I did speak to their entire group that came to that meeting. They also post their meeting. I believe they post meeting minutes for the group, that anyone that wasn't able to attend as well. So they were fully comfortable with it. There were no objections to what we were doing. They understood where we were and where we were trending in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Other commissioners who haven't asked questions yet? Commissioner Prado?
I always have questions, Mayor.
I know that.
I'm not sure how to do this exactly because I don't want to have to keep popcorning people to come up, but I do have a few questions from CPED, if someone is here. I could speak to those. So Director Mitchell's coming up, thank you. I just first want to say thank you for including home share in the budget. I know that has been something that I have tried to make sure to lift up for multiple years, but going back all the way to when Vice Mayor Patrice Griffin was on commission, that was when we first started to bring that work forward, but also want to really make sure to thank Toby Hannah-Davies and Martha Huckabee, who both are big advocates for that locally as well. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. My question for you is in terms of for funding that, we definitely want to try to set that up for success. Mm-hmm. And part of doing that, I think, is diversifying the funding that can go into that program to make sure that if the city were to find itself unable to fund it in future years after the first 3 years, that there's a diversified pool in the community that's potentially helping to support that. I was curious if there's any consideration with what our budget amount is for that program in 2026, if there's any interest in going to Housing for All millage or senior millage or other county or community partners that are passionate about funding housing initiatives to see if they want to help contribute to support it in future years. Big loaded question, sorry.
Yes, no problem. Mayor, Vice
Welcome,
Mayor.
Director Mitchell.
Yeah. Thank you for having us up here to answer these questions. To my knowledge, from talking to staff this week, that they're pretty much assessing all those options. And once they get done with assessment review, they'll be able to make more of a recommendation on the structure of pretty much what organizations want to participate in, but also what the funding requirements for all that participation would be.
And I would imagine for this budgeted amount, it would restrict those efforts to probably the city of Kalamazoo until there's funding for outside areas as well.
To my knowledge, that's true.
Okay, great. The other question I had for you, and this might be challenging to answer. It might be something that's kind of a follow-up one, so please excuse me in advance, Director Mitchell. So anyone who's followed things that have happened in the state recently, followed cannabis and the taxing of that at the state level. I believe that the state is taxing 24%, which there were a lot of concerns about how that would impact the industry, about whether things would go back, I guess, underground, or whether that would impact a lot of local businesses and the sharing of revenue with local communities. I was curious if you have any insight or have heard anything in terms of like concerns or projections of how that could impact us locally, because that has been a pretty significant area of revenue for us since we legalized cannabis.
Yes, you are correct. We have gotten feedback from the cannabis industry locally, and it will have an impact on them significantly. We're looking at how to maybe reduce some costs that they have locally with us in our process to assist, but also hopefully getting them to work more in a collaborative effort with our Kalamazoo Community Cannabis Chamber that we created as well, to strategize on better ways to work with the state. The tax was I won't say surprise, but significant impact on them locally here in Kalamazoo, but also the state of Michigan. So it'll be interesting next year how, quote unquote, funding reductions will happen for that industry, which may close down some of the local businesses here and also across the state of Michigan.
Thank you for that. The other question I had, talked about a little bit about neighborhood capacity building funds, so outside of the core neighborhoods, and was wondering if someone would be willing to just talk a little bit more about what's envisioned with that and how that would look moving forward as well.
We may have to invite Ms. Anderson up on that one, so here she comes.
Planner Anderson.
Thank you, Director Mitchell, as well.
Commissioner Pradel. Capacity, neighborhood capacity building. So as Rebecca Kick mentioned, we currently fund many of our core neighborhoods, our 5 core neighborhoods, through our general fund. This is a small dollar amount that is intended to help us in a similar way serve the other neighborhoods. Remember, we have 22 that are all in different levels of organization. So some we have really no great point of contact to ones that have awesome, like long-running volunteer organizations. And the goal is to bring everybody up to a place where we have, where the neighborhood has a good point of contact, so they can reach out to their community for whether it's events, whether it's there is a emergency and we need to share information that way. We want all neighborhoods to have some level of organization for communication, and on our end, we want to be able to have that two-way conversation and two-way information sharing with the neighborhoods. So these funds will help us focus some of our time outside of our core to lift up those organizations, help create organizations where they don't exist, and so forth.
I think that's so cool. I'm really excited about it. I think it would be key to try to figure out a way that's equitable distribution and figuring out how to do that. I just know that there's a lot of neighborhoods that have interest in doing something more, maybe looking at bringing on a full-time or part-time staff member, but those challenges are a barrier, so that's really exciting to see that. The other, I think this is the last CPED question as well, is about blight elimination. Really interested and passionate about that, but my question for you is, DCM Kick, you mentioned that the goal was to try to fund 3 to 4 of those house demos if things happen. We know that last year we had a serious arson issue where we had far more structures than usual that had been destroyed effectively because of that. And my question would be is that guidance in terms of aiming for the 3 to 4 based on like a 3 to 5 year trend of what we typically see as a community, or is it just kind of a baseline of where we want to start? And then kind of secondarily to that, if we see ourselves in a situation where we have a year like we had last year because of some unforeseen horrible situation like that arson issue, how do we make sure that we don't have a dozen homes laying, destroyed around our neighborhoods?
So the additional funding is for those people who do not have fire insurance do not fall underneath our CDBG criteria. And we typically see the 3 to 4 homes that do not fit those criteria that then this additional funding is for. But we can typically have someone who already has fire insurance that takes care of the blight elimination, typically will fit into our CDBG funding, which we also have set aside for demolitions, and then this funding is for those outside of it.
Okay, that's
So,
great.
yeah.
And we could always look at potentially readjusting if there was a
If
huge
there was
influx of
something
people or something.
significant, yes, we would absolutely come
Super
to you.
excited about that as well,
Yeah.
so thank you for
No,
making sure that that's in
absolutely.
there as well.
Sure. Yep.
I think I'll take a pause for colleagues, but those were some CPED questions. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Other first-time questions from commissioners? Commissioner Slaby.
Thank you. I did just want to note for our CFO, on one of my mobile devices, I tried to open up one of those 4 fund sections, and 20 minutes later, it still doesn't show up. So I would like to say it isn't accessible for all devices. We can talk more afterwards, so that's totally fine. So my question was about this new building inspections fund. So I don't know who can come up and speak to that. Specifically, it sounds like, from previous discussions related to this, that it's going to cover all expenses. Does this include also car leasing? Because I know more than just that, that division in CPED leases cars. So how does that work?
Yes, for that activity specifically, it would cover any car leases related to those employees doing that work.
Okay, so all expenses tied to the building inspections division would be expected to be covered by this fund?
Correct. That fund is expected to have a surplus in 2025 and then projected forward with the activity that we're seeing in building permits and building coming in the next couple of years. We expect it to continue to be, potentially at a surplus or, break-even point going forward.
Okay, so thinking about the major turnover that we've experienced in that division with staff, and we're currently contracting out and paying a lot of money for an electrical inspector, the idea is because of the surplus, potentially we could hire the right amount of staff to be able to address these gaps that we have. My question is, what happens, because this is based on the market, when we see a decrease in construction activity? Is the thought then, is the logic here that we would then lay people off if the fund is then no longer able to maintain covering those positions? Or do we think that there is at no point, even if it dropped to a certain level, that we would need to do that after hiring additional staff?
I don't think the intention would ever be to lay anyone off. I think it's right-sizing the fund between the staff we have and the contracts we have. If anything, we would decrease the use of those contracts before we ever got to the point of having to lay anyone off.
Right, but let's say we get another inspector because we're 6 months behind in water heater permits right now. So we get another person to deal with that capacity. We finally stop contracting out to our electrical and get an electrical inspector, right? That's 2 FTE coming in online. Because we have the surplus, we're able to maintain that. After that, if we saw a decrease in construction activity and we had less money coming in for that fund, and we got to a point where we said, wow, we took on 2-3 people as full-time, what would be the discussion there?
Yeah, that would just be, looking at the available fund balance, the projections for upcoming permits, ensuring that the fund, and the activity is right-sized. If we had to, we would be looking at not renewing a position as it came open would be the first option in that scenario. So if somebody voluntarily leaves, we may not fill that position. So it really just comes down to, like I said, it's looking at your fund balance, it's looking at your contracts. If you have, internal staff are significantly cheaper than contracting out for this activity. We've seen that over the years. And so that would be the hope, is to maintain internal staff and maintain them in perpetuity.
Okay. Along the lines of staffing, on slide 19 of the presentation, we noted 711 full-time staff, 6 part-time.
Yes.
Does that include those positions that we have contracted out, or those that we may have provided funding for that aren't necessarily through the city, but potentially like the county resilience manager?
That does not account for any external positions. It's only internal city staffing positions.
Okay, so for example, we contract out our assessor, correct? So are they not counted in this number?
They are not in that number. They're in the other services and contractual line items.
Okay, do you, off the top of your head, know how many contractual employees we have?
I don't. You know, it can fluctuate from year to year, be significant number, just depending. You know, you bring up assessing. You know, it's a place where we share our assessing services by contracting through a third party. You know, locally they do Portage, Galesburg, Battle Creek, and so those same employees travel between all three locations. And so it's kind of hard to exactly quantify that we're, you know, how many people we're solely responsible for when we're sharing and cost leveraging, you know, with other communities.
And do we know the total amount of money that is going to these contractual employment positions?
We would have to pull that data. I wouldn't have that off the top of my head.
Okay. Out of the for personnel and how we fund our personnel, what is the percentage of general fund that is going towards this 711 full-time and 6 part-time?
Give me 1 second. Do you by chance have that? We're going to try to pull that for you real quick. I will say that, you know, some positions are split between multiple funds as well, so it's probably not going to be a round number.
Okay.
But if there's anything else I can get you in the meantime while we try to pull that number for you.
Well, I had a question around another staffing. So for solid waste, we're looking at adding 2 laborers. Is that going to be covered under the solid waste millage, or is that coming from our general fund?
That's going to be under the solid waste millage in a separate fund.
Okay.
Okay, maybe while we're waiting for that answer, other questions, commissioners, at this time? Commissioner Prado? I'm checking everybody before I call on you, Chris.
Sure, thanks. Well, Steve is up here too. That'd be good because I do have a couple of Steve questions. So one thing I like to ask you, especially because I believe you are a finance and economics person trained, is, you know, in the year to come, are there any anticipated trends that you're looking at that you are particularly paying attention to that could adversely cause hiccups or things in our planning, if not this year, in future years? If you had like the top maybe 2 or 3 things that kind of, I don't want to say keep you up at night, but, you know, that you think about often or that we should be paying attention to in concert with you, what would you say those are?
Yeah, for the city, it's monitoring the cost of housing. You know, our property taxes are directly related to the increase or decrease in housing values. So, you know, as housing values decrease, we're definitely keeping an eye on that. You know, typically takes, you know, 18 months to 2 years for that to filter through the full system. By the time we see that decrease, you know, looking back at the 2008 crisis, the city really hit its peak trouble around 2010-11. Even though that crisis started in 2008. So we're always tracking housing prices. We're tracking, you know, keeping an eye on, you know, new builds, growth, sales, because with the way that our property taxes are held, if you stay in your home, you know, your increase per year is capped at the CPI number. When you sell it, it uncaps. So especially for larger buildings and sales that may not have turned over in a few decades, those can have a significant impact on our future revenues. And then beyond that, we're just tracking our, you know, our different services, seeing the use of those services, different permits, keep an eye on, you know, are we keeping up? Are we projecting those things to increase in the future?
I remember, so this might have been a couple years, well, this was when it was like peak inflation, like 9.2%, and I think it was June 2023, or maybe when it was the highest level. But I remember Director Baker, when he was doing presentations, was talking about like how cast iron piping we were trying to buy in bulk because that had gone up like 300% or something wild like that. And I guess in terms of just like looking at the macro level of the city, are there any inflationary pressures or things in particular that you're particularly watching or causing particular strain on us as an institution?
Yeah, I think we're always keeping an eye on that. What I've seen more recently is things have calmed down quite a bit. Doesn't mean that we don't have areas of struggle. Just track the cost of different commodities. And over the last 12 months, copper has seen a spike. And so when copper spikes, that makes those lead services more costly to implement. So we're constantly, through our purchasing, through our bidding, keeping an eye on those things, making sure that when we do put bids out that we're staying within the budget we've allocated. Sometimes it's getting creative by, bulk purchases and keeping an inventory on hand here. Other times it may be downsizing a project that we wanted to do more, but now we have to live within the means that we have.
Mm-hmm. In the state budget challenges section, you talked a bit about the revenue sharing loss in the public safety trust fund shifts, if you will. And I was wondering if you could just kind of talk a little bit more about particularly the public safety trust fund. There was that $700,000 to $800,000 and how that shifted, and explain that a little bit more of how it's different than it was before and how that's going to look going forward.
So in the 2025 budget, there's a public safety trust fund set up for cities and townships. As they negotiated, that was eliminated, and they implemented this new public safety revenue sharing component. They funded it lower than the previous amount, but also they included counties in that, which took away a little bit of our funding. And that is something else we'll be monitoring going forward, because the state has projected to decrease that funding in the future as well. They provided one-time funding in 26 that they said do not expect going forward.
Oh, wow.
So we're expecting that to come down. Trying to remember the exact number, above 20%. And then on top of that, this new trust, or the new revenue sharing component, it does take into account your crime statistics. And as you heard our police chief talk earlier, ours are getting better, which means that we have the reverse incentive that the less crime we have, the less funding we'll get.
Yeah, we'll have to talk to our elected delegation about that one. And then lastly, you mentioned in the 2026 general fund deficit, you mentioned that $1 million deficit anticipated in 2026. You had explained that $250,000 was going towards the builder inspection fund shift that's going to happen, but the $750,000, you said that was planned for years. Can you talk a little bit about what that planning $750,000 impact was?
Absolutely. So, we've had this year on our radar for quite a while. This is a year where in 2026 we have two different bond issuances that mature and finalize. So typically we only have one fall off per year. This year we have two fall off. So we're going to see a big reduction in that expense in 2027, which is what gets us back into balance. And so our two choices at that point are we can have 1 year where we use a little bit of fund balance, or we have 1 year where we have to cut services to then re-implement the following year. And this is where having that fund balance policy and a little bit of extra in there allows us to smooth this out over the couple years.
Cool. Thank you. I'll pause there. How many people can say their finance director, their CFO, has an economics and finance background? That's pretty sweet. Anyways, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Pradel. Other questions, commissioners? Yes, Vice Mayor.
So earlier, I just want to be certain, we talked about 14 new positions being created for solid waste. And again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I believe you said that those will be mostly funded by grants?
So it's 14 positions overall. 2 of them are in solid waste, and that is funded by our solid waste millage.
Okay, thank you.
And then we did have an answer to Commissioner Slaby's question. Was it 100, what was it? Okay, it's 463 in the positions in the general fund of the total. So roughly 65%.
And then one more. When you go to the website and you look at 732 blight removal, it shows 2004, 0, then 170, 170, and 31. Can you explain to me what those numbers mean? Does that show a true decrease from last year's budget amended to this year to address blight?
I'm going to have to defer that question to, I don't know, Rebecca, do you have that? I think we may have to research that one before I can get back to you on that one.
Thank you so much.
Great. Commissioner Slaby.
I forgot to ask, with the building fund and building inspections fund, for any resident to take a look at it online, where can you find that?
That would be under our special revenue funds page. There's 2 special revenue fund pages. That'll be under the first one. And it'll actually be, I believe, the first fund listed there.
Okay.
Commissioner Hess.
Sure. Steve, you know, Commissioner Priel said something about what keeps you up at night, but what allows me to sleep at night is trust in you and your process. So I just want to thank you for, you know, really having your fingers on the pulse of Kalamazoo and really doing your due diligence and being able to put this whole budget together. So thank you for that. I don't think you can answer my question. I need COO Lamb, I think. So last week, December 4th, we had our 6th annual Shop with a Senior program for the with Public Safety. We partnered with Public Safety. Public Safety actually partnered with Milestone Senior Services, with Town and Country Market, with Midtown Fresh, and with Park Street Market to provide 55 senior citizens in our community $150 worth of groceries and a shopping trip and a lunch and just feeling special. I think it was a gigantic success, and everyone that shopped just loved it. It was an amazing, and we've done that now through our commission and through our commission dollars. So you know where I'm going with this. The commission has a particular fund, and if you could speak about that a little bit for our new members here and what we can do with that. And I won't say what I want to do in May or June, but I'll save that for our meetings to see if it's doable. But can maybe you speak to the fund and what it has done and what it can do in the future? And
Certainly. So speaking of the City Commission Initiative funds, there's $100,000 a year allocated to that line item. Certainly there's been a lot of different ways the funds have been used. One of the things I want to stipulate is that they are general fund dollars, and so any use of those funds has to be eligible under our municipal finance regulations. You might recall in '24 we had a great tutorial from City Attorney Leal just reminding us of the ways in which we want to make sure that those funds are used appropriately for municipal finance. In '24, there was support for YWCA for 2 of their programs. There was some resources to augment communication for water affordability. Certainly Shop with a Senior has been a recurring fund, a recurring investment. I will say that one of the things we've mentioned with regards to this is we're looking at less of it being an ongoing expenditure. And as it relates to Shop with a Senior, trying to coordinate with Public Safety to have that program added to their budget on an annual basis that would not rely on the CCI, City Commission Initiative funds to proceed.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Questions? Commissioner Praedel.
Just had a couple questions.
Competition with Commissioner Slaby here.
I just had a couple questions for Director Baker, if he doesn't mind.
Yeah, can't go through a meeting without having a good Director Baker come forward.
Director Baker, good evening.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, City Commissioners, Vice Mayor. Thank you for having me up here.
Thank you for spending a lot of time last week as well, helping just kind of answer and work through things. I want to first of all ask this question with recognizing that there's great complexity in terms of how things are funded and what budget lines things show up under. But under the local streets, I know we mentioned that we potentially are seeing a little influx of funding to support our local street efforts. There's a line 450, and it's routine preventative maintenance, and it shows going from a little over $1 million, so $1 million and some change, down to $847,000. And I was just curious if kind of just what's guiding that decrease, and if there's any concerns about being able to keep up just with that just routine maintenance of roads. So I'm assuming that would be maybe like potholes or that sort of thing as well. And then kind of along those lines, there's then line 451, under local streets that's winter maintenance, but that one went from 187,000 to 711,000. I'm thinking to myself, do you know something about the next winter that we don't know? That might be way more complicated than we think. So I was just wondering if you could speak to maybe both of those and what impacts either of those could have, or maybe if there's a reason for both.
Not in the budget document currently, but just from memory, we're talking about 203, 450, and 203, 451, correct?
I believe so, yes. I'm just looking at my notes.
Right, so these are operational items that, kind of the work we do every day. They're not capital focused. So to talk about the winter maintenance aspect of 451, that's a lot of the work we do for salting, snow removal, that sort of thing. Any kind of budget increase could likely be to salt, where we're showing salt. Could also be FTE, so there was a FTE increase, and we're putting additional FTEs in there. I think I'd probably have to spend some time with the budget team to look at like a before and after to get into the exact details. I will tell you from a global perspective, our budgets and our work and planning for 26 and future years is going to be more intentional for increased maintenance in local streets. So there's a couple of things, and you'll see them in capital as well, that we're going to be focusing on increasing the pavement life cycle. So there's projects that speak to Pazer, that was in your presentation. There's also some maintenance preservation work that's going to happen. There's also increased focus on stormwater, so a lot of work on stormwater maintenance as well in those plans. And then we're committed every year from a winter maintenance perspective, although year over year those numbers might move around a little bit as our storage of salt supplies usually spans more than 1 year, and sometimes we have to replenish that in out years or not. So I think I'd probably have to get back with you on the specifics of why you're seeing one go up or down.
I often like to just look for any major shifts, and then, just gives me a wondering. So those were two that came up. The other one was, I think it'd be really helpful for people to hear about the solid waste positions that you're creating as well. And I know we had, I always forget if it's Vector or Vactor that we approved last meeting. And that's related to, that capital equipment is related to those positions, if I'm not mistaken. And if you could just kind of speak a little bit to why those positions are needed and what the critical work that they're supporting based on, I think it's expectations from the state in terms of that work with.
Sure, so there's a few things happening. There's position requests for positions in streets, and those positions are going to be performing majority of work focused on stormwater. That's what, yeah. There was also an equipment purchase, a Vactor. That's a machine that helps clean storm sewers. So that equipment purchase and those positions, those items go together. Then in a separate fund in 226, which is solid waste, there was also a position request for 2 positions. And so those are different things are happening. The 4 positions and the Vactor would be dedicated to
the 4
positions.
The 4 positions, yes.
Okay, yeah, so that's the 4 positions, and the Vactor would be dedicated to stormwater basin cleaning. So there's over 13,000 stormwater structures in the city of Kalamazoo. Those are kind of spread out throughout all of our neighborhoods. We have a new initiative with the state of Michigan to clean all of those structures, so clean and inspect. So we're talking about pulling the grate, sticking that big tube from that Vactor machine into that sump. There's a sump, and it varies by size and location, but sticking that Vactor nozzle down into there and then cleaning that all. It's like vacuuming. It's like cleaning all of your ductwork in your home kind of thing. So we're going to get all the material out of that, inspect that, work order that, and it's our goal to move through the city in 3 years. So we plan to start in 2026 in Burke Acres and East Side, and then move our way west across the city. That would put us in North Side in 2027, and then start to move down into our southern neighborhoods in 2028. So there's going to be a lot of great work. We're going to be out doing that work all throughout the city, cleaning those structures, and there's a lot of great things going to happen with it. One, we're going to get some eyes on and really understand any defects or improvements we need to make, and that ties back into the capital program. You see in local streets, we've got a stormwater capital line item so that we can come back and make repairs and upgrade those structures or those storm sewers that need to be repaired. And then also that's cleaning out silt, sediment, and debris. You may remember a few years ago, and this was FFE funded, we cleaned out over 11,000 cubic yards of sediment from Crosstown Pond number 1, and then the twin culverts. I believe they're 60-inch diameter culverts that run from pond number 3 then to the outlet with Axel Creek. So there's a lot of great investment happening in the stormwater world, and stormwater for us, for City Kalamazoo, is funded as a component of streets. So that's all funded by gas taxes that's appropriated down at the city level.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for Director Baker while he's up here? All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Slaby.
Yeah, so I understand that we recently shifted via Consumers Energy to solar, which we would then start to experience savings from that. In what year do we anticipate seeing that hit our budget? And then has there been thoughts on how we would leverage those savings and where we might allocate that? I think about it because, you know, city staff and the commission and the community worked really hard on getting community sustainability plan developed, and then to get one full-time position created as a sustainability planner. But over the last few years, really very little has been done to financially support the work that this position has been created to do, and to ensure that there's effective implementation of that plan. So I'm just wondering, how can we find better sources to fund this sustainability work? And so my thought is, through the savings that we will experience from shifting into solar through consumers, is that a source that we could potentially leverage for something like that?
So I'll start off on this, and I may have to pass it off as we go. So our first year for that consumers contract for the solar starts in 2027. Okay. A majority of the savings for that contract will be in our water and wastewater fund. I want to say like 90-95% of the energy saved is in those two funds. And given that those are ratepayer funded funds, I don't believe that'd be the ideal place to. You could fund sustainability within those funds a little bit by using some revenues in there. You could not fund general fund or other sustainability projects by leveraging the water and wastewater fund. Anything further? Sorry.
Well, and maybe this is then a question for CPED is, you know, when we start to figure out, as the community continues to ask, what are we doing around sustainability? What are we doing to ensure that we are budgeting in a way to allocate resources towards that type of work? And if someone could point out where we might already be doing that in our proposed 2026 budget, that'd be great.
Yes, I cannot answer that question. I can get back to you on what that process is with staff, and we could verify what the next steps are looking in that area.
I see Planner Anderson is coming forward also.
Okay, she got something to add.
So I do want to add that, you know, every year with our special request budget, there's a number of requests that go forward. And our sustainability planner, Justin Gish, usually does include some that are related specifically to sustainability projects. They might be in partnership with public services, they might be in partnership with Parks and Rec. Not everything gets moved forward. So we will continue to understand what the City Commission's priorities are as we look forward to discussing it with you all at the retreat in February of next year, and then we'll put forth requests that way. Much of what Justin has been able to do to advance the community sustainability plan, he's been able to do with smaller dollar activities or outside grants, which he's been very successful in working with our grants department to find dollars to do those types of programs. Things like looking internally, because that's a lot of what the sustainability planner's role does, working with Chris Broadbent in public services, thinking about compost and waste and how we can impact those resources, because those are smaller dollar projects right now.
Yeah, I mean, since this is just, also a discussion today, I just would also encourage my fellow commissioners, vice mayor, and mayor, many of you were here, championing the development of a community sustainability plan and a creation of a full-time position. And so I would hope that, honestly, those don't go in vain because we're not able to fund the work, the actual work that needs to be done. And so I would love to see in future budgets money clearly allocated for this work and find some kind of sustainable solution for the sustainability work that needs to be done across the community. My other question around specific departmental budgets is no longer for CPED, but for 311. And so, their budget looks like they relatively maintain the same levels of funding year to year. We continue to hear from the community that either they don't know 311 exists or have certain concerns around being able to connect with them in a very effective and meaningful way. One of the pieces of feedback that I hear again and again is that 311 doesn't really receive a lot of funding to be able to do an awareness campaign or be able to have staff go out to do tabling events, et cetera. And so has there been discussion within city manager's office, within management services, to better understand the needs from the community around engagement and being able to connect with 311 and how we're allocating resources to be able to effectively address those concerns?
I'll take a cut at a start. One of the things that has come up quite a bit with regard to 311 is often feedback of I call, I put in a request, and I'm not sure what happens, or I don't get the resolution I'm looking for. So much of this year and heading into next year, we're transitioning our customer response, CRM, customer Relations Management Tool, CRM, acronyms are going to get me. We're transitioning from to a new model to Salesforce, and one of the driving forces behind that is we didn't feel like we had the ability to better track inquiry from call in to actual resolution, and what is more important than that? So there certainly has been discussion about increased awareness, but quite frankly, the focus is how do we make sure that the customer experience from call into 311 to hand off to department to resolution, let's make sure we've got that working better so that when we are encouraging people to call, they can have a positive experience. Certainly the effort and energy of the 311 team is to provide the best customer service possible. What we're finding is challenges in tracking and making sure that there's really good collaboration between 311 and departments. Previously, I think we have added resources for engagement. If I remember, there were some challenges of freeing up staff to be able to do that. So I think that's a conversation that is going to need to happen. But I know the energy right now has been about improving the system, improving the tracking, and then quite honestly, that tracking can help yield examples of why we need more resources to support 311.
All set for now? Commissioner Slaby?
I have one more question, and I'm done. I'm completely done.
That's fine.
With my whole list.
Go as long as you need to.
So I may have missed this during the conversations at this meeting. What was the number that was confirmed for neighborhood planning? Is this the 9,000 for the capacity building?
Planner Anderson.
Commissioner Slaby, there are two numbers. One is neighborhood capacity building, which is, I believe, $6,000, and one is neighborhood planning, which is $9,000. I spoke earlier to Commissioner Pradel's question regarding the capacity building, which is really, again, lifting up the neighborhoods that we don't currently fund to get them more organized and more equipped to handle internal issues and to work with the city. Neighborhood planning is to set ourselves up to start neighborhood planning work after the master plan is done. Master plan won't be done until end of second quarter, so neighborhood planning work next year will be a little light. It won't start until sometime in quarter 3, and so that money is to help us get started with that process, which is why it's a small dollar amount.
Okay, and is there additional funds from the CPED budget that are going towards neighborhood planning activities? I think about, previously we gave $50,000 to building blocks to do organizing just in the Douglas neighborhood, and then previous to that we gave them a $20,000 or $30,000 fund to do the same thing the year prior. And so are we looking at doing some of those similar activities in addition to what we've set out for neighborhood planning with those numbers you've provided?
So the funding that you mentioned was ARPA, the American Rescue Act funding, and so yes, we did we did support building blocks in doing their outreach engagement and community block work in the West Douglas neighborhood. As far as new monies in 26, the two items are what are requested through the special request process, the neighborhood planning as well as the capacity building. We, of course, have in our general fund the line item that supports our general fund, our core neighborhoods and supports their work. So that is within the general fund. And we always have a line item for outside contractual services in planning that can support one-off projects. It could be working with neighborhoods, or it could be, hiring a consultant to support our, review and changes to an internal process like the development process. So that those funds are also available if something comes up in 26 that's needed for neighborhoods.
Yeah, while I see that we're in a transition period with the new master plan, I am very discouraged with these numbers. As you may or may not know, we're providing $22,000 to Parks and Rec Youth Council just to do youth council event planning activities. We're $7,000 less than that at a $15,000 total between capacity building and doing neighborhood planning work. Mailers alone eat that entire budget up if we're looking at doing 4 to 5 neighborhoods. So it sounds good that we're doing capacity building, but what can we really accomplish with this little budget in order to be able to effectively get all 22 neighborhoods prepared in time for this IK 2035? What we saw with IK 2025 is the neighborhoods weren't organized at the beginning of that adoption, and so even after 10 years, we still had half of our neighborhoods not organized in a way because they weren't able to be resourced and to allow for organizing and understand the tracks to be able to successfully come together and do stakeholder engagement, et cetera. And so to me, this is the opposite direction we want to head in at the beginning of a new 10-year master plan to ensure the effectiveness of the work that we want to see produced with the great work of all staff, on the ground connecting with these neighborhoods.
Sure, I understand that. We are trying to manage budget availability with staff capacity and trying to request an appropriate amount of funds that we are able to deploy in a year. We also know that we're going to be spending the first half of 2026 wrapping up the master plan. And so that means all winter we will be out in our neighborhoods doing our neighborhood Imagine Kalamazoo meetings, which is an opportunity for us to engage, make connections, and set us up for that future work. And so that is where most of staff capacity is going to be through the first half of 2026. And we look forward to coming back in 27 with a larger number for neighborhoods as we get through the master plan and understand the direction that we want to go. Thanks.
Thank you. All set. Commissioner Hess.
Sure. I think this one is for Director Baker. Come on down. I think it's a simple one. There's a line here for pollution control, and it's a little bit less than it was last year, but is that our H2S monitors? Could you talk a little bit about what we're doing with pollution control, having brought up sustainability and the sustainability plan? And then where are we as public services working with our sustainability coordinator to make sure that his work is effective as well? Can you talk a little bit about sustainability?
Just a follow-up question for clarification. Is the number code prefix for that a 101 code?
The end is 621, health and welfare. It's under health and welfare, under pollution control, and it's for $235,000.
It's a 101, okay. Yeah, so that's going to be environmental consulting work related to Cork Street landfill. So it's actually separate from water and wastewater. So water and wastewater are all 590 or 591 account codes. And so that odor control work that we presented to the City Commission during our water and wastewater presentation was about $2.6 million. And those funds are specific to wastewater, and those are going to be in a 590 code. So this 101 code, that's for work associated with the Cork Street landfill. Thank you.
Sustainability. Where are we working with sustainability planner Justin Gish?
So there's a lot of topics there. If you go back to your community sustainability plan that was approved by the City Commission in 2022, that's available online, that has many different goals and strategies outlined all throughout the document. And so it deals with everything from dealing with large sources of emissions from a community and from a city operations perspective, things like heating your home. All of our homes are probably have heat in them, or we hope they have heat in them. And those heat sources combust fuel, maybe natural gas, maybe fuel oil, maybe some sort of solid fuel. And so there's goals and strategies for that. There's also the work the city is doing from a carbon footprint perspective, which includes fuels that are combusted in the vehicle fleet, a lot of energy usage, mainly water and wastewater, and we've been making a lot of advancements in that work. So just to kind of talk through those real quickly, water and wastewater are your biggest sources of energy consumption. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to run the water system and to run the wastewater system. We executed a contract with Consumers Energy to, as Commissioner Slaby indicated, to take all of those energy usage through Consumers Energy and transfer that to renewable sources. So that could be wind or solar or hydro, but that's all natural sources. So that contract is signed, that's in place, and that first year that goes into effect would be 2027. And that's a huge chunk of your sustainability, of your carbon footprint, reduces it just kind of in one fall swoop. Some other areas to focus on are your vehicle fleet. So we have a pretty large vehicle fleet in the city, things like sedans, cars and vans, all the way up to the big equipment you see plowing your streets. So starting with the big stuff, the big stuff, the dump trucks and all the equipment that's out there, all that equipment, we transitioned over to a biodiesel product a few years ago. That started with a pilot. That pilot then went to a few phases to prove its vocational ability throughout all the operational deployments that we have, including cold weather, and then we went and actually implemented it at full scale. So all public services equipment now operates on biodiesel, and the other thing we've been doing is we've been increasing that blend. So it started off with a 11% biodiesel, that went up to 14% biodiesel. We're moving now to 17% biodiesel, and next year we'll cross over into 20% biodiesel. We also have electric vehicles that we're transitioning into. We have 2 electric vehicles in public services, 2 Silverados, electric vehicle pickup trucks. We've installed a number of electric vehicle charging locations at our Stockbridge and Harrison facilities, and we now have that charging infrastructure in place. We just completed a fast charger at Harrison this summer, so we can go from a near empty battery state to a full recharge in a matter of about 40 minutes. Still it's a little bit longer than gas and go at a fuel pump, but it's much, much shorter than like an overnight situation. So we're working with our fleet department to kind of long-term manage our fleet, the enterprise program that we have, fleet leasing, sorry, I was stumbling on fleet leasing, but we lease a lot of those vehicles, and so we're looking at when do we take that vehicle back off a lease, and then does that make sense to then get an electric vehicle at that time. We're also, now that we have our charging system in place and telematics, we're working on some of those numbers. So you've heard, the cost of EVs are expensive. There's an upfront cost, right? But the cost to maintain them over the life maybe a little bit cheaper. So we're analyzing right now those Silverados. We have gasoline-powered Silverados, we have diesel-powered Silverados, well, biodiesel for us, and we have electric-powered Silverados. So with the telematics in place, we're now gathering that data. We probably won't have anything in terms of firm recommendations for 2027. We may be ready for that, but certainly after that, we'll be able to go side by side and provide much more clarity on the overall costs of electric vehicles, and then you'll start seeing more of those come into the vehicle fleet. I'll pause there. There's other aspects of the sustainability plan, but the carbon footprint is among the bigger pieces of that we are working on.
Right, thank you. And I know that when it was presented, when the solar project was presented to us, that we really did consider the carbon footprint. And so, thank you. And I know that you work closely with Justin and with Chris Broadbent and really working on the sustainable. Are we going to have composting next year? Is that going to go? I know it was a pilot project. Is that going to move over? Do you know?
It's still, we're not full scale yet on composting, but there's some things that weren't quite proved out far enough for us to go forward with changes in the budget. So the foam, we're doing a great job with foam recycling. There's some potential capital improvements that we'd like to make in that to be able to launch a bigger, wider program into the future. That work wasn't fine-tuned or distilled enough to get into the budget this year, but we'll probably be working on that for potential special requests for next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Commissioner Hoffman.
Good evening. I have a question. Was any of the electric vehicles or chargers purchased this year?
So the electric vehicles, I believe those were purchased last year. The chargers were purchased this year. We had a number of chargers that were purchased with grant dollars and or local match dollars, so kind of putting that together in the FY25 budget that were completed this year.
I was going to ask you, are you able to take advantage of the elective pay tax credits for those EV chargers? All of it was covered with grants and matching funds. None came out of your budget?
So the matching funds did come out of our budget, and then the grants came in. I think the way the grants worked out is that that was kind of a package deal together. I know we are in constant communication with Consumers Energy about different rebate programs for things like electric vehicle chargers, that sort of thing, and I know we're kind of keeping those lines of communication open to move forward in any of those programs when we're ready to do so.
I would love to share some information with you later on this week if we set up a time about elective pay.
Yeah, we'd be excited to hear more about that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. Other questions? Commissioner Pradel? No, okay. All right. Well, lots of great questions. I really appreciate that. I'm going to jump in just with a couple myself here. We talked a lot about the increase in the Act 51 funding this year. That's cooked into our budget. We're depending on that. I have seen some recent news. I don't know if we've been following that or not, but also heard from the Kalamazoo County Road Commission members who received a presentation from their director there, that there may be timing issues with that. We may not be receiving that increase in this calendar year that we're hoping for. And another thing that was mentioned was this lawsuit, which may be prohibiting this 24% in wholesale tax increase, which could also maybe hurt that share. Have you heard anything about that?
I've heard a little bit about some of the timing issues. I guess I'm not aware of us not receiving it during this upcoming year. The timing issues I was aware of were the state's on a September year-end fiscal year. We're on a calendar year. I knew that these, some of the new fees weren't going to start until January 1st. So for us, that wouldn't be as much of a timing issue as it may be for somebody not on a calendar fiscal year. Additionally, in our local and major streets budgets, we're still projecting surpluses at the moment, so we have some cushion, some leeway that if things don't come to fruition as those early revenue projections indicated, we're still going to be in a good place with those funds overall.
Okay, great. And another question for you, Steve. What is the health of our parking system, the parking structures? I know that has been a challenge when we accepted responsibility for those back from DDA, correct, a couple years ago. So how is that, our capital improvement needs, scheduled out there, and what's the health of that system then?
Yeah, so when we took back that system, there was a number of deferred capital projects that needed to be done just to maintain, particularly the parking ramps. Right now, we had supplemented in the past with some ARPA dollars to help buoy the parking system during the downturn that happened because of COVID. They had a plan where, hey, we're expecting X number of people to come park downtown. Obviously, during COVID, people worked from home, they stayed home, they didn't come downtown. So we helped supplement some of those lost revenues. We're currently projecting, a loss of our parking fund of roughly $1 million. And I know we have Deputy Director Christine Anderson here, working with our outside consultants and our parking system to implement, more of our upcoming parking strategy, which will hopefully help turn that revenues around and get the parking system into a better place overall. We're looking at, relatively short leash of trying to get that done over the next 2 years or so before we start truly depleting all of our available resources in that fund.
Helpful, I appreciate that. Still something of concern then when it comes to our overall budget is our capability to successfully manage that, at least in a revenue neutral sort of a way, without additional contributions from the general fund then, correct?
Absolutely. It is definitely a concern that we have on the radar.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Steve. Other questions, team, for this evening? All right, well, I just want to thank everyone for all the deep dive questions and work, and basically being prepared to answer all those questions. Thank you, city team, for being able to do that. Just a reminder that we're going to have this official public hearing on the budget, which will be at our next regular meeting, Manager Moore, December 15th. Another opportunity for feedback to us from the general community and for us to ask more questions, and then we won't actually be voting on the budget until our first meeting in January. So it's lots of time here yet. I know it's complicated by the holidays. We can't change that. Our fiscal year is the calendar year, so this is how that works out every single year. Now is our opportunity for commissioner comments. Are there any additional comments that commissioners would like to make for the good of the order this evening? Vice Mayor Duncan.
Just a huge thank you to Public Safety For those of us that attended the tree lighting, Chief Boyson talked about officer presence and officers being in places like on the bikes, and I was very shocked to see public safety out on the bikes in the cold. So a huge shout out to you guys. Thank you for being present downtown. I definitely heard from a lot of the citizens that there was a feeling, the perception was that they were safer. So, you know, kudos to our public safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Other comments, commissioners? So I'll just follow up on something which we've had at least for a couple of years now, and I don't know if we're going to have to change the strategy on this, but I've been hearing a great deal about what has been occurring to us, which is snow comes before the leaf pickup is finished. And I know what's happening is that leaves are staying on trees longer. We seem to be getting, well, snow's earlier than it was 20 years ago, but at least in recent times we've been getting snow earlier, so now we've got this unfortunate situation where we've got leaves stacked up, rotting here and there, maybe getting plowed around a little bit. And so there's that. Also, it seems like we're struggling a little bit with the low temps and trying to get some of this snow, now ice, now slush, well, back to ice again, removed on our side streets. And I don't know, Director Baker, if there's anything particular you want to say about that, but it seems like this is maybe going to be more the norm than not going forward, and I don't know if we've been thinking about any strategies to address that, but it's definitely something I've been hearing about quite a bit here in this last few weeks.
Sure. Certainly, thank you for that, and thank you for lifting that up. Those challenges are very well described, and some things that we are working with. We can't start leaf pickup until Mother Nature drops leaves, and unfortunately, that is impacted when Mother Nature then decides to drop snow. So it's a little bit of a full court press that we've got to focus on to get those leaves when they are down. I will say that the LEAF program is not done. We are continuing that work. And in fact, we're mobilizing now with a contractor to bring in additional resources to help us with that work. So we're going to continue that work. Again, as you stated, we're in leaf pickup, which it means we're tooled the equipment, the dump trucks, and many other of the ground support equipment to that leaf program. So that's all the equipment is outfitted with different attachments, that sort of thing. When that snow hit, we had to kind of retool everything and get back out there. We also were challenged with some equipment that breaks down. Those things happen. We were supported by many great local businesses on Friday to help get us back up and running, including the Napa stores here in Kalamazoo that came in and made hydraulic hoses for us to get us up and running again. And so a lot of our work kind of behind the scenes was retooling and getting those dump trucks and front blade trucks and things ready to be able to move again. So it was a bit of a challenge to get us back out on that road again, and we're continuing to work through that. We did receive a significant amount of snow here over the Thanksgiving holiday, and then into it, including Sunday morning. Our crews were in at 3 a.m. Sunday morning to continue this work. We're committed to the work. We're committed to upholding and maintaining that highest standard of level of service that the City of Kalamazoo expects from us. I would just ask for folks to please be patient with us, with the leaves, with the snow. We're committed, we're going to stay with it, and we're going to continue to focus our efforts on this work that Mother Nature is all throwing at us all right now. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Director Baker. I appreciate it very much. Seeing no other comments, then this will be the end of this meeting. We'll see everybody in a week. I love you, Kalamazoo. We're adjourned.